Art's not going to be here, so I guess Rob will be here, or Steve, when they can make it. So we'll go ahead and call to order at 1:30. Mickey's here.
Terry?
Hiding in the corner.
I did.
First item on the agenda, public comment. We have one member in the audience. Anything that's not on the agenda that you'd like to discuss? No?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
to go along with that, I would like to make a motion that we bring other business up to the front, because there is a matter that I want to address that she may be able to provide information on if needed.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda, but it's a continuation of the discussion we had about New Whale Street,
About New
about
Wall
the
Street.
parking down there.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and take other business out of order. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. If you remember the prior discussion, we talked about the challenges we have with the continual parking down there, people illegally parking along New Whale Street during times when the buses or the boats coming and everything else. And quite honestly, while we have a CSO or 2 or 3 assigned down there, it seems to move right along because they're out there moving them along. But when they're not there, it tends to block up. But this summer we encountered the additional problem of the boat basin runs golf carts, for lack of a better term, around their facility there to handle many, many different chores, picking up garbage, moving the customer's luggage from the boats to the ferry or vice versa. Sometimes taking people stuff from some of the boats in the boat basin over to their car in the parking lot, different things. And oftentimes they come into conflict with the traffic on New Whale Street. And the result has been that they've been told to stay on the sidewalk and not on the road. And to add to that, the state police has been kind of diligent with them about going onto the road with their golf carts. It is a perfectly legal thing for them to do as long as they are confined to the traffic regulations in place for that road. But because of the number of pedestrians we've had this year, especially with the number of people coming off the boats, there has been some conflicts on that sidewalk with them, even though it's their property. So they came to us and asked if there's something else we can do. And my staff came up with the idea that might solve 2 problems. If we could identify or mark a lane along New Whale Street in that parking area as bikes and golf carts only, that would give us a prohibited zone from which we could ticket people who park there, and we can keep them out of there. And it would also open up a lane for the bikes and for the golf carts to travel without being on the sidewalk and travel safely in compliance with the rules and regulations to conduct their business around the boat basin. I think the way it's laid out now, it makes it perfectly able to be able to do something like that and still maintain that pull-off and the drop-off area that's there. And I know there's some talk about future work along there. Mm-hmm. Somehow this may or may not incorporate into that, but I think if we would move forward with this and at least have it in place for next, this winter and next season, I think we'll see a significant improvement in the traffic safety of pedestrians and stuff down there, and the fewer conflicts between the golf carts and the people that are moving on foot there.
Okay.
I don't have a diagram of it, otherwise I'd show you. But
Okay.
we had it in the previous packet.
Yeah.
Art had it drawn out there only for a different purpose, where he was wanting to prohibit parking along that stretch of the road.
Okay. How wide are these carts?
They're just standard 2-passenger with the probably
4 feet.
4 feet maybe. Yeah.
4 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason I ask is do they need to have two-way flow
No.
along that lane? So just
No, they can figure that out.
Okay. So if say 5 feet was made available,
Yeah,
that's
Isn't it already no parking along that side,
it is.
even though people have parked there?
They stop there. They stop.
Right.
Well, see, what Art wanted to do was make it no stopping, standing, or parking,
Right.
which is different. Because if somebody stopped there and they're in their car, They're not parking, they're standing, okay? And that's not prohibited by the current language.
It makes it hard getting out of those
Yeah.
parking
Parking lot.
spaces, out of the parking lot, right?
But at the same time, thinking about it from a citizen's perspective, it's a wide open space that's not being used or has no purpose. Why are you telling me I can't stop there to wait for my people to get here? Because where else can I stop? Well, once we move them on and we point to where they can go, they understand it. But this would provide something there without any kind of real investment
Where they
in
can't stop.
changing anything where they can't stop. It's a prohibited space, and it gets what we're trying to do, Rob. Just so you understand. Sorry, I have to repeat. He came in late
No, that's
halfway
fine,
through
go
this,
ahead.
but that area along New Whale Street, down between basically from the entrance to where the High Line goes to down to the Anglers Club is where we're talking.
Okay.
Art had made a motion, and we discussed in a previous meeting about making it no standing, stopping, or parking to try to keep vehicles from coming in there and giving us a tool to use. And we had a discussion, but we also have a conflict with the golf carts that are on the boat basin's property, and they've been told to get on their own property with the golf carts to go back and forth. But because of the increased number of pedestrians, we've had a lot of conflicts with that this summer, with the boats and everything being different than they were in prior years.
It's just, first off, sorry for showing up late and having you have to go through that again. I would add to the discussion and just say that the town has been offered, I think, a 3-foot take from the boat basin
NIR.
along that whole stretch that we're describing,
Good.
which would, I think, allow for that temporary parking and loading and unloading, and still have vehicles be able to turn effectively in and out of the parking lot or throughway.
What's the timeline on that?
Well, it comes down to prioritization of that taking. And my understanding is it's basically turning it would be a gift. It's not something that we would necessarily,
Well, if everything went perfect, we're talking about next summer having that widened out.
yes, if it became an instant priority. The priority in that area that I'm aware of is the backyard barbecue taking, which would allow us to finish the sidewalk, but because this is sort of it's a private way,
Right.
and so.
So what we
doing
were
improvements there would require that.
requesting here was as an interim, because that would certainly change things if that was the pull off in the future. But what we were suggesting is perhaps that a lane could be designated in the roadway of about 4 or 5 foot wide, probably 5 foot, that could be designated for bikes and golf carts transversing up and down New Whale. Right now, they have no way of doing it legally because they're going against the flow of traffic if they go onto the road, and the state police is requiring that they don't do that. And if they stay on their property, which they legally can do, then we've got the pedestrian conflict. My guys have trouble keeping the traffic moving because it's not illegal to stop in your car there. It's illegal to park there, okay? But Art was suggesting we just make it no stopping, standing, or parking. I'm suggesting that we make it a prohibited or restricted area for bikes and golf carts, a lane to go up and down that. So that'll take care of that pedestrian conflict. And it'll give the officers something which they can use for enforcement purposes if somebody parks or stops in it. Because you can't obstruct those kinds of lanes. So, and it would basically, the only thing it would cost would be the price of a stripe and a couple of signs that say, for whatever, golf carts, bikes, or whatever.
We're gonna stripe the cobblestones?
Did we
Well,
confirm,
that's one of
confirm
the
that
challenges.
New Whale is public? I swear it's private.
It's private with a public easement.
Right.
But
So
New
what
Whale
you said,
Street
it's for
is
roadway
public, isn't
purposes.
No, it's not.
It's not a laid out public way. It's an easement control.
it? That was given to the town over 20 years ago,
Yeah.
but not as a way.
Well, even if it's an easement, we'd have the right to do that.
I'm sure the language is
So
written very broadly.
I would just say, and I'm not saying it strongly, or I'm just saying that I think the taking would make a market difference down there.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
And I would say this should probably be kicked back to town management to get a take from them as to how much of a priority that specific taking is, and what their expected time frame would be, working with town council and NIR, before we actually make a decision here. But if they give us a definitive, hey, we're moving forward with this, then maybe we wouldn't need to do this, maybe, or maybe
Well,
it helps us.
but on the other hand, I can see where if we take a little more chunk out of just sitting here thinking out loud, if the town is successful in the taking, we're going to compress that pedestrian right or
It doesn't touch the pedestrian walk. All it does is go into the
garden?
The planted garden.
okay. Okay, so that it would impact it though, because a lot of people in between the areas, they stop there and stand there with their luggage. That would push them all back, and that would even make that even more tight for them to get their golf carts through on their own property. I would be concerned. See, they right now could take that lane, that sidewalk, and they could block off a 5-foot lane with a barrier and prohibit pedestrians there just for their golf carts. We don't want that, because then we got about a 3-foot wide pedestrian passageway there.
Yeah.
So,
So there might be opportunity on the other side of that planted way to widen from their side. You know what I'm saying? It's narrow. I mean,
it's
that
on a
whole
bulkhead.
that
Yeah.
grass area or that treed area is pretty narrow. I believe the discussion was the environmental from I think from DEP said they need to leave the trees. So whatever we can do and leave the trees is what kind of latitude we have.
Okay. That's not a lot. You're right. It might be about 3 feet, maybe.
But something to at
Yeah.
least, you know, if it helps allow the carts to stay up on the,
Well, I
Both
think
basins
I think that'll actually make it harder for the carts to stay on the on the sidewalk.
if we widen it.
Yep. Because the problem is they don't have a lane, and they're going against the flow of traffic with the carts, and they can't do that legally unless it's in designated.
I guess, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is, if we could, if the bulkhead is here, at the basin, and we have an existing width here that they're sharing, if like this would be potential for the cart, and whatever's left over is for pedestrians now,
That's how.
Rob, can
wide-
I ask you to
that's
just
how wide
reference
it is.
the image behind you?
sure. And here's the street.
Traffic safety? Two fairgrounds.
Oh, too fair.
Plastic there.
So all I'm saying, we're talking about this grass area or that green area. If there's any way to pinch it from both sides to come in, I don't think we even have the ability to come in 3 feet.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
if we came in 2 feet on this side, it's definitely going to help just people turning out of here when cars are unloading. And if there's a way to grab a foot of additional width for the walkway. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to do a ton of things at one time. It's not all the time, but it's when it's at its highest peak use, it's pretty shut down there.
I mean, the other option for the boat basin is to get regular trucks and run garbage around, and we don't want that. That's more trucks.
Because they can't go the wrong way then, if they
Right.
get rid of the tracks. They get rid of-
It's
Well,
almost like that whole area needs a rethought.
it does.
Well, I think
And just-
wouldn't that,
that's,
I thought that was all part of
Yeah.
whatever that,
Well, I think this is all right, good, but I guess I'm looking to what can we do now in the interim until we have an ability to redo
so
in the
if,
long term.
if we
those
came
things.
in a couple feet here
Yep.
in the street and
A couple feet
we
over
came
from
back
there.
a little bit back here, again, now you're talking about a sidewalk that goes from here to here. and
Or
you still have
further.
room, you know, and they
Yeah.
could put a stripe down there.
But
Uh,
it still doesn't get the carts off the pedestrian way. I think that's kind of,
No, but it's designating the pedestrian way or that they're on their property, their own cart path, if you will. Which I would guess, if it's striped and signed or something, you're gonna have, and you put some kind of
Put a rope barrier up.
a beacon or you're gonna at least let people know, like, if you're in an airport, for instance, and they're doing the people mover, and they have a little alarm thing that goes off to let you know that someone's coming up behind you and to get the hell out of the way. I think that would work.
I think there's enough room there. I'm down there quite a bit, and it's very rarely a problem there, as far as I know. It's more of a problem where the sidewalk is really narrow down by the
Closer to commercial.
women. Yeah, but it's not. I don't see
Well,
it as a problem.
but part of the problem too is them coming off, like right here, they have to go the wrong, they come out of the boat, or the dock entry there, over there,
Yep.
and they gotta go the wrong way to get into the parking lot, to go drop people off. That's why our thought was if they had a lane
Right.
that they could come down along the road, then they could just shoot into the parking lot. Otherwise,
I see what you're saying.
yeah, because I'm thinking even with the sidewalk, you know, and like I say, I'm sure we can figure something out in the long term with a design. I don't think any of that's going to happen by next summer, or this busy time this year. Even, you know, we're kind of behind the 8 ball this year.
how far down were you talking, Chief?
Just down, they've got
To
a
the-
place where they go back up down there further before the Anglers Club.
Yeah.
I think you can almost see it up there if you're
I just didn't know if you were looking all the way down to Straight Wharf and
Oh.
down to the end or not.
not. No, I don't think so, because it's not a problem beyond the Anglers Club.
Yeah, it's a tight sidewalk that way
Right.
too, but I didn't know if it
Yeah,
was
there's
as
not
big
that
of an
much
issue. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think somewhere there's a little ramp that goes.
Yeah, they usually
right
throw
there.
some, the
Right
wood
there.
down right there.
That's where I'm talking about, down to the handicap zone.
Someone needs to check the deed. When Barnaky gave us that land, one of the things it said in the deed that garden must stay there. So I don't know how you get that.
Yeah, I think that was a
2 feet
chapter
of that
91 issue.
What's that?
I think it was a chapter 91 issue. They need to have some amount of open space, and whether they provided all of it or not, some of it lived in that green space there. And now, to me, as far as I know, that was kind of an issue. Bill, I mean,
Well-
you've also thought about the operations of pickup drop off. There's a lot of live parking that goes on
Yep.
there. This would force that into the Stop and Shop parking area
It
for
would,
that.
it would be easier to force them into doing what we're doing now, and that's moving them on.
Yeah.
And they get up around the corner. Generally, what most people find out is they get around the corner, and there's plenty of spaces up along there for people to stop and discharge passengers. Now, some of them stop right down the corner and think that's all the further they got to go. If they'd go up another 50 feet, they could stop and do what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's the taxi stand though.
Well, I meant beyond the taxi stand. During the daytime, those parking spaces are rarely used up there for very long because they're only 30-minute spaces.
Right, one, two.
So people come in and jump in and go. But, or they tell them to, you know, stop and discharge in the parking lot. You know, go up around and stop and do it there. You know, I'm just wondering here if this sidewalk on the parking lot side became the green space, would that be the same as the Chapter 91 requirement? Just a whole nother topic.
I was told very specifically by the person that I was dealing with that the trees in that planted area have to stay. That was the impetus from the environmental folks, that we could move the curb line as far in as we could that would not impact the trees.
Okay. Well, that's a whole nother discussion, but in the meantime, this other one's what we're,
Right, nice if you could do both. Move it back a little and then get your other space out of the road.
yeah.
Do you need can the carts? I'm just spitballing. Can you share that lane with pickup drop off and have it be cart space? Do you have carts operating during pickup and drop off
Not really.
operations?
Well, it's not, you can't really have pick up and drop off there. It's
Okay.
too tight. People come around the
No,
corner.
I'm assuming if you created the extra space.
Oh, in the
You
future?
got a parking lane. Is there demand? Is that when you do your dump runs in between boat services?
It's not just dump runs, it's cart luggage and
Okay.
all kinds
They
of other
cut
stuff.
people
Okay.
back
And that tends to coincide with the boats.
So people are,
Um,
you know, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That'd be a competition for that space.
That's a huge impact, doing anything there. I mean, at any given time during the peak, there's gotta be 20 cars that are jammed in there unloading or loading.
Well, we move them on during the summer. When it becomes a problem is starting now when we don't have people down there moving them on. In the summer, it's not really an issue. In the peak of it, I mean, it tends to sometimes become one. And if you get down there in the first boat in the morning, it's an issue because we don't have any CSOs down there. But after that, throughout the day, it's rarely backed up there because there are like 3 guys standing there moving it.
I guess, so I can understand, I'm trying to picture a lane that's specific to carts,
Mm-hmm.
in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And did you say pedestrians as well?
No, bikes.
Bikes and carts?
It'd be
going-
laid out like a bike lane, essentially.
And they could be coming the wrong way?
Yes, on that.
I obviously understand that we're trying to work, it sounds like, with the boat basin's concerns and requirements, but it seems totally contra. And I bring up only the discussion we've had in the past about contra bike lanes.
Yep.
Is like.
Oh, I understand that part. I agree, but I don't know of any other solution that addresses the problem and improves the safety down there. I mean, the problem is there's a shitload of pedestrians on that area and during these boat transitions, and even not necessarily during the boat transitions anymore. On the weekends, people just sitting down there.
Just as a point of clarification, whose road is that road? Is it a private way with an easement?
Yes.
Okay, so it's private property,
Who owns the property? NIR?
Yeah. I
but we
believe
have
so.
control over it.
Supposedly, we were supposed to have traded
Well,
that road.
but that's
Old
something
Wales
that
Street for New Wales.
that's something that's got to be looked into. But
Right.
right now, it
For
looks
that.
like it's not.
Evidently, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so again, this part of it is new to me. I've
Yeah.
only looked at the curb shift. I'm actually thinking, I'm wondering if this could get shoved more meaningfully out a couple feet or so. And the sort of those little brick connections where people
Mm-hmm.
tend to sit there with their luggage. If one of those or two of those
Be
could
made
be
into-
widened
Maybe.
and actually improve as a ramp,
Like a handicap ramp
Yes.
type thing.
where you could bring the cart down and utilize the space they currently are. Like
And then
further
cut
down,
off.
like right in the center, go
Yeah.
down to one of these. Yeah, like here.
Yeah.
So let's say we found space between trees, hypothetically, we could move, or even just here. Get rid of the trash, or put the trash on this side, and widen this over to here, closer to the tree. Make this a path that the cart can come down. Cart stays up here, it's on a little bit wider sidewalk here, and then it has a path down that it can cross and not have to come contraflow. It's all up, you know, this, and then when the cart's not moving, this is a much, well, not much, but it's a little bit wider.
Yep.
So you have a
pedestrian.
path on each side of the tree then?
No, you'd have a car
One
path
way,
just
one
down
way, the other way.
down the side.
Is
Just-
one of the
just on
intentions
the
of this
sidewalk.
is to get the carts off the sidewalk? All
Yeah.
right, so it's to get it away from the
Well, that's
pedestrians.
given the current configuration, you know. But what Rob's pointing out is
If we made it bigger.
we have a potential for making it bigger and reconfiguring it. Now the question is that next year, the year after, you know, 1, 2, 3 year project? I don't know, but
That
you
would
know,
be something
what
working.
I would like to see is something done alternatively, even if it's temporary, by next season, so we don't run into the same issues we had this summer.
Is there any way just to take and put out the individual standards to put on the street to designate a lane for the carts?
Yeah, with a rope or something along it.
Yeah, not even rope. You put enough of them out, it's gonna be a little bit of an eyesore. I think a rope would just add to people trying to jump over it and end up on their face.
Yeah. I know
But
what
just
you're
the
talking about.
just the stanchions to put out there to designate a lane within the roadway, it does two things. It provides a cart path and
Keeps
restricts the
people from
parking from
yeah,
there.
That's true.
And we're not putting paint down, we're not investing a lot of
Yeah.
redo afterwards. You know, it's not a big correction thing. Instead of having to try to take paint off of cobblestones, we're taking and picking up stanchions, and that's something the property owner might be able to do, and because this is really helping them.
Like put the cones out in the morning and pick them up at the end of the day.
However it is, you know, and you know, they don't even have to be picked out at the end of the day
Yeah.
because they're going to be there, and you know, we're really talking about this through June, July,
June, July,
August, and
August.
parts of September.
Is the cart delivering people to a specific spot in the parking lot?
You know those reserved spaces that are in throughout that lot?
Or the ones that are always empty?
That's, well, but those are, people have those and that's where they're
Sure.
trying to go.
Okay,
Or to those vans
Yeah.
right there.
okay.
Yeah, the walnut vans that are there.
So,
It might be a, you know, instead of striping, instead of redoing everything else, and
So,
then that would be a
just so-
partnership.
So clarify for me, so
Yeah. that's
is this
probably a good idea.
because we can't take carts over the road?
in part, yeah. They have been harassed by the state police for going the wrong way on a one-way street without benefit of any kind of authorization. Now, I believe everybody thinks that's a public roadway. Because I was like Jack, I thought down to the Anglers Club that was town property.
Right.
I got a feeling the state thinks the same thing.
Do you think they would change their mind if they knew it was private property?
I'll check with that. And I actually thought that problem would go away when the former trooper retired, but it didn't. Or sergeant.
I'm,
Bill, two things. One, do you want to hold this over for the next meeting, and in the meantime, confirm with the town manager what the priorities are for this lane?
Yeah.
And also, perhaps we schedule before our next meeting, maybe a site visit to this area?
I think the biggest accomplishment here today was now Rob knows this is a factor in this whole thing. We need to, so whatever we do down here, we need to figure out a way to incorporate it or address it for the long term.
Okay.
I mean, long-term, we'd always be talking about shoving the opposite sidewalk into the parking lot. And you know, it's a bigger discussion because it's private.
Right. Well, to some extent, that can be their solution. And it's not necessarily a solution that has to be done by us.
No, I get that.
We just have to be able,
But my
and we have to be in coordination with them on
Yeah.
doing it and understand that, you know, why they're trying to do something. I mean, if I'm looking at this and I was looking at how we could do this, and I like the idea of putting up some ballards, the temporary plastic things or whatever. I agree with Steve, it's probably not gonna be that sightly. But if we had a long-term plan and the road was wide enough, you could even put a curb there. You know, that would prevent cars from coming in, nobody would see it.
But I think, I'm
and
thinking
that.
sort of the opposite way, that this is such a high volume transfer
Mhm.
that it's almost like if I were to look at this, we'd be designing it anew with the thought of a exclusive drop-off lane as opposed to
Mhm.
accommodations for a car.
Yeah,
But again, I'm getting you back to the premise. If this is simply a notice by the state police to the
well,
property owner that, hey, they shouldn't be doing this because, and that could sort of go away if they're informed that they don't actually have rights over that to harass them in that way, then I would say maybe this goes away and they continue to do the practice that they have been. But I'd like to hear, from the boat basin as well.
Just on one point on that, I thought that the sidewalk across the street was our property. I was informed by NED that, when we gave that section to the town, which is my understanding is that we should all verify that sidewalk went as well. So that's why it wasn't like that we crossed that street and use that sidewalk to stay off the road and get into the parking lot. So I believe from the Anglers Club to Straight Work, we did give to the town about 20 plus years ago.
Okay.
But I think we should verify that,
Yeah.
maybe an easement, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, because, I mean, honestly, I've been executing a plan that it was developed long before me, that is basically improving pedestrian volumes off the boats and out of, and up into, to disperse around town. And clearly, you can't get much closer than New Whale. So if that is in fact ours, I would say we're probably gonna hit the pause button on moving up to South Water and focusing on, and again, I'm still fairly new, but I would say maybe that was left because of the pending possible project, and we didn't want to spend money to then spend money again, or have private money infused to fix it all again. That's possible, but if this project is not moving forward anytime soon, maybe it's time, if it is our responsibility, to shift gears and bring those changes to bear now.
It would be appreciated by us for sure, because our desire is to get the golf carts off of the pedestrian
Sure.
sidewalk. And it is very busy midday, early in the morning, later in the afternoon, it can lighten up. But midday, it's everyone getting out of the golf cart's way. It's not safe. There's several golf carts going both directions. It's, handicapped passengers. It's all kinds of things that we're trying to move. Pump outs. It's nonstop.
Sure.
We're busy. It's our
Yep.
busiest time. So anything that we can do to relieve that off of the sidewalk, even in the interim, just until the final plan is done, we would appreciate it.
So I think there's a decent amount of research to be done on this before we come back with anything.
Okay. And maybe in the meantime, we try to schedule some kind of site visits just to go down there and again,
Yep.
take a look on the field. I mean, the street view's fine, but we can check on some more ideas. That said, our regular meeting was on the 18th, or we'll talk about other meeting dates if and try to schedule that then. Is this something, Bill, they can wait until the end
Yeah,
of
oh
October?
yeah. It's the season's almost over, so
Okay.
I wouldn't wait too long so you can get an idea of the people. I mean, come December, there's not as many people,
Yeah.
but it is quite busy. And like I said, it got our attention this year pretty quickly, and I think that's how this whole thing got started when some people, we had some new people here on the island this year, and we talked with Christina over a month ago about it, and we tried to work some things out, and it didn't work out.
Okay.
So this is what I
Okay.
said, well, maybe we need to go further.
Is this sidewalk gonna propose to be changed in the sidewalk improvement plan that you've been working on?
Well, this
No.
whole property has an asterisk on it.
It's not on there.
It's not-
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no current plan in place?
Not on this stretch, no.
Okay.
Which is why I brought it up. I think
Yeah.
if it's truly town-owned, then it needs to be brought into this plan immediately.
Yeah. It's kind of outside of the sidewalk improvement plan and more of the Harbor Place
Got it.
project.
Which is really long-term.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this topic? We'll continue this in the next meeting.
Thanks, Christine.
All right. Next on the. Here's the mouse. I was gonna get this picture off. Yeah. There we go. Next on the agenda is review a request for a crosswalk safety sign on the crosswalk in Milk Street and Wynn Street. This is proposed from John Miller, who lives right at the corner of Wynn Street and Milk Street. And there is an image of the sign that he'd like placed in the crosswalk in the center line. And again, this is the location of the sidewalk for that. I'm happy to take any comments on this, but obviously I think the one operation that I don't think is quite figured out is this permanent? Does it get moved, and who's responsible for it?
Chief and I both weighed in on this through the manager's office, and I think it's just the constituent didn't like the answer.
Okay.
These are up, the only place I've seen these are at locations that have people that will take them, put them in place, and then take them out of service when they're done. And we don't have departments that do that. So there's a school that has custodians that do crosswalk patrols, and they put those in place, and they take them back out of service.
Yeah.
The same goes on Sparks over at the Boys and Girls Club when that's active with children.
Yeah.
This is a different situation. I would, based on my own experience, I would not endorse putting a permanent installation because it's not permanent. And we don't have staff that would be available to take this in and out of service. Because there is, frankly, there is no situation that exists over there that is anything like where they're currently being used. There's not a school function or activity period of time or even an annual event that occurs that would sort of fall in line with those two previous examples.
Yeah.
Signage has been installed as part of the original approved plan that took place before I got here.
Yeah.
That's in place. There's been, I think, an added warning sign that was coordinated with the police department further downwind in the direction, further down Milk in the direction of Hummock Pond. So as you come over the hill and approach the curve and the crosswalk, there's a warning sign now.
Yeah, there's a crosswalk on his side,
Yes.
that way, and on the other side.
So that's actually been added, Mike, and that was not part of the original approved. So I would guess,
Correct.
you know, I would not guess, that's been steps that the department has taken to improve the safety of this particular crosswalk.
Okay.
In addition, as you know, we have noticed the homeowner at the corner and the proponent here that part of the site distance issues that exist out there were part of his landscaping.
Mhm.
And I believe he has taken some steps to start to carve that back.
Yeah.
And that's actually should be noted that part of that package was another homeowner who had paid for their own engineering study for site distance in that area to come up with that same conclusion.
Yeah. Okay. Does this need any more discussion, or is there a recommendation?
Are there any signs right at the crosswalk?
There are.
Yes.
They're right there, okay.
So those were the ones that were part of the original engineered plan for the bike path improvements. And subsequent to that, someone mentioned to this person, hey, we could put up warning signs, sort of the precursor to the actual crossing. So we have installed that.
Also the speed limit changed and everything else.
Speed
Lowered
limit,
the speed
yeah,
limit.
that's right. The speed
From
limit.
the top of the hill down is now 25.
Yep. So those coupled together, and again, it comes back, and I'll foist this onto the chief at this point, but it then becomes an enforcement issue, right? Because what the complaints continue to come in as, people are going too fast through those areas. So
Add it to the list.
that's right. So it's.
It sounds like there may be a consensus for no action. Is there a recommendation for no action on the requested sign?
Make a motion, take no action.
Second.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Item number 2 is review Commission on Disability request to relocate one accessible parking space from Federal Street at Broad Street to Broad Street. And shoot.
So this was confusing, only in the sense that you're talking about basically adding a space on Broad Street. Are you talking about eliminating one of the two on Federal?
The idea is to get two functional spaces. It doesn't
Okay.
really matter where they are. If you can improve, the one closest to the corner, that's number 1 up there,
Yep.
the problem is on the passenger side, there's all kinds of stuff. Do you know what it is, like a trash barrel or trees or?
It's a lot of furniture. That's a mailbox.
Why don't we just make the two on Federal Street there, because that's wide open on both sides? And then just make those other two regular 30-minute parking or whatever it is.
Or remove the obstacles up from the sidewalk.
Well, that's another option too.
Yeah.
What?
It's easier for the handicap if they have one and one, not two together. Because it's hard for a lot of the handicapped people to back into that spot in the middle. So if they can get a
Right.
spot on the end of Federal and a spot on the corner of Broad, it would be a heck of a lot better.
would you put it around the corner that far down, or would you put it where that black SUVs parked.
Yeah, that
Well, that's a no parking area.
Oh.
It's gotta go down a little so the cars can get around that corner.
So it'd be the first space is what you're
Right,
saying.
First available space.
I'd make a motion we do that. It seems the most logical thing.
Like we relocate space number 2.
Yeah.
Really, get rid
Well-
of space number 2, right.
So that, but that doesn't address Jack's point, having,
Obstructions?
well, if you,
What are the obstructions?
well, the number one is probably where Jack was saying we probably want the space, but that's
Yes.
where the obstructions are.
Yeah, but what are they?
Do you know what they are?
I think there's
It's a
parking
mailbox.
signs
One's a
or.
mailbox.
Pull up
I
the
think it's
street
a
view,
sign.
Mike, on that one, or?
Yeah, there's trash cans and
Oh,
mailboxes.
the trash
which-
cans. Could be.
Here's what I would say is, timing is just the challenge here. We could certainly do anything, but keep in mind, this massive sidewalk improvement project is now moving. It's coming this way. It's gonna take a couple seasons to get here, a couple construction seasons to get here.
Right.
So my point is that, not that we shouldn't take action now if we can, but there's, I think that where the mailbox is, if I remember our last visit out there looking at bike tie-ups, we could probably move that fairly reasonably to where a tree used to be, to eliminate that sidewalk access, or keep these set up the way they are with a vote
Yeah.
that will change it when the sidewalk project comes through.
Yeah, I mean, if the obstacles can be moved so that there's nothing blocking that side of the vehicle, that solves the problem for us.
But you'd still want one on each corner, right?
Well, I think that, Jack's
Is
point,
that
that
better?
would be ideal. I'm not sure it's a priority, but that would be a good way to handle it.
It's easier than backing in there.
Yeah, I hear
See,
that.
that second spot on Federal Street is smaller than the one up front
So the
for
problem.
some reason.
The street
problem
lamp
really
or
is
the
or the
street
mailbox?
Oh, trash, mailbox,
And a lamp.
and a lamp. Lamp may not be as big an issue. You can kind of avoid that.
That kind of looks like the issue. The mailbox for the second spot in the tree.
And
Yeah.
I think it's dirt there too, isn't it? I mean, that's just,
Well, the other point too is I would have to take a look at position of the crosswalk and
Yeah.
the handicap ramp, et cetera, when when the project actually comes through. That may actually slide that space back slightly, so the pole's out of the play.
right. But for now, if we can get rid of the trash barrel, the mailbox, and pave, put brick in that space, that would solve our problem.
Put brick where?
And
Well,
dirt.
and then fill that from curb right up to the sidewalk with brick, because I think it's planter now, or dirt.
Yeah, it's just.
I think there's a stump there,
Okay.
so it would need to be ground out, and that's something that we're pursuing.
Well, that would do it.
But if that crosswalk's gonna push you back a little, that'll work out all right. That way you could work back into that second spot a little bit.
Is the no parking stretch there, how far down does that go, right to that?
Right to there.
Right here.
Right,
Probably a little longer
And then
than
there's
That's what I was
Yeah.
looking
Right,
at,
longer
maybe
than it
we
needs
can
to
shorten that
be.
up a bit.
right.
Alright, I would say we could probably solve this two ways, a short-term solution and a long-term solution.
Right.
We could improve accessibility to the space number 1, in the short term, like before spring.
Great.
And then we could endeavor to move space number 2 around the corner and shorten up that no parking area once we have a solid plan together for what the sidewalk improvement project's gonna look like over there.
Because there'll be a crosswalk there in that future, won't there?
Well, on the other side.
On the up,
On Broad,
right,
going over.
sort of
Oh,
separate,
okay.
well,
Well,
it's
a
gonna,
lot of people go, where's the crosswalk then?
it's
going
at
the other way.
the entrance to the building, town building.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's an old one. But
Yeah.
it's right now.
Yeah, but the good news is the one that Mike showed just before this, is a good delineator for the do not enter.
Yep,
Replace the barrel.
yep. That'd be good.
All right, so Rob, that sounds fine. If you can clean up the sidewalk, that's really all we need.
is that a big issue relocating that mailbox?
Not my issue.
Probably got to get written permission from the president or something. It's federal property.
It is federal property.
You know, I think they are in a, are they anchored to a slab?
Sometimes they are,
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
So it'll depend on how it's anchored there. Since that's dirt, I'm gonna guess it's got a slab under it.
Maybe, perhaps.
But the mailbox really doesn't look as big a problem as the street light, to be honest with you.
It's also
But-
the material,
Yeah,
Dirt.
it's the dirt probably more than anything
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, when we go down to look at the New Whale Street, why don't we go and take a look at that?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, is that, we all set with that item? Going on to item number 3.
So interesting enough, I looked in our records. I didn't find any record of any accidents at that location.
This is my comment.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean there weren't any. It just there weren't any that rose to the level that we wrote reports on.
There was never other stop signs, it was only for one. They put that,
No.
that's when Jack was, we installed one up there, we were told to take it down
Right.
immediately because it ruined the guy's deal.
Yeah.
So,
Put them up there every week for a while.
I mean, it's these stop signs. It is. That's what happens to these things. They're up one week, down the next, up the next, down the next.
The guy that lives there on the corner used to tear it down.
So they're wanting a stop sign on my comment coming from the beach. That's yeah.
That's like on South Road. It's in the
I mean,
middle of
Are we
the
talking at the dirt edge and the,
Yeah. I
he
mean,
wants it a three-way stop,
Yeah.
effectively, originally said.
well, that would be the only way to do it without creating other problems. So it's either a three-way stop or it's just an uncontrolled intersection.
The brush, the way the intersection is too, it's so overgrown that if they cut the brush back, you'd have a great sight line, you wouldn't have any issues if you had that. Cause really on this side, the dirt side, this picture doesn't do justice, it's really grown.
Was that the public road?
We experience this a lot also, where we get information from people that is not accurate. And especially if someone is reporting that there's been a number of accidents and there are none. It's one thing if someone's exaggerating a story, saying, there's accidents all the time and there's one. But if there's none, and
There's
it's,
been none reported
Yeah.
in my record that I could
Sure.
find. But
that's all, I just think
Yeah.
we should consider that. And you guys who know better than I, this particular location, what kind of traffic exists seasonally and if it's truly an issue. We have some history of people tearing signs out, which is a whole nother discussion.
I mean, looking at this just on its face, the only thing that this would seem to call for would be a stop sign on Pondview.
Which it does have.
Yeah. And
And like I said, I think if they could trim the brush back on each side, you'd have better visibility, more so on the south side of the picture, but.
whose land is that, or whose responsibility is
See,
that?
and I think my common road was a town going right to the dirt, when it stopped, when we continued down.
I don't know what the layout looks like for my comment road.
Yeah, we could research the ownership there and if there's a right of way. Clearly, vegetation management has challenged, has posed its challenges around the island. If there's a vegetation solution here, with keeping the Pondview stop sign in place without having to add 2 more, that might be a preferred alternative.
When you're coming down Pondview, when they reinstalled the stop sign, you can't, there's no other place to put it. So where I have it is as far as I can go, you stand back, you can't see. So it's either, vegetation on both sides, so I'm assuming that would be there, but I'm not doing most, but. It's really, I mean, that would
So stop sign's on you before you know it, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and you come up and then you see it's so much brush, but like I said, this picture really doesn't do it justice. It's growing pretty good, that whole pond, both sides. Better than that section.
Well, I would suggest that the first thing would be is if that's a town-owned intersection, that maybe we trim the vegetation back, and then if not, then whoever owns it be asked to trim it back.
We can table this for next month, and I can do some research to see what the layout is. If there's good, it's a wide road, 40-foot layout, and only 20 feet of it's being used as a dirt road, then there's definitely room to widen it out. So if it's all right, we'll table this.
That'd be great.
Yes.
All right. Item number 4, review Nantucket Cottage Hospital plan for proposed parking spaces along Vesper Lane and road widening and median at Prospect Street.
It looks like they're already started this project.
Yes. No, I'm not 100% sure on what the action on this is, other than if the select board wants to accept these improvements. It's contingent upon the permit from the planning board. I guess we'll take comments to go one at a time. The parking along Vesper Lane, the on-street parking, is there any issues or comments about the on-street parking along Vesper Lane?
Yeah, so I met with the town's engineer representative for the planning board, Mr. Ed Pesci, to try to understand this a little bit more. This plan predates my existence, but it's noted here, if you could read it, that says basically these paved parking areas are the town's responsibility. So they have a property here with a crosswalk. It was noted to me that these were formalized in an effort to support what's known to be the laundry, and a lot of people parking on the side of the road when the laundromat's parking lot fills up to be able to just...
Which is fairly frequent.
Sure.
Yeah.
So these 6 spaces would support that effort without having people go in the hospital parking lot, which is fine. However, especially if you're providing parking on the opposite side of the street for a property here, we wanted to really take a look at if there was a more meaningful way to get them there safely over a crosswalk. So we came back over here and noticed there's only one, and there's actually nothing to get you there from these spaces. So that's something that the hospital folks and their contractor are investigating, basically putting a formal crosswalk through the entrance here. So at least that there's a way to get people across and back to the town sidewalk system. That's all I had on that side. On these 11, there was a discussion about, so the town is on the hook for the pavement costs here. I've asked them to, David Gray's got a contractor that's milling and overlaying Vesper Lane following the sewer improvements. So I've asked them to give me a price to have these done, and we'll pay for it out of island-wide grading fees.
Are they laying it out? The hospital?
The hospital's installing the curb line.
So all you gotta do is pave it.
So we pave up to, they gotta do the base prep for because there's no base material there, it's just dirt.
Yeah.
So they gotta prep that and then pave it. So there's also, not shown on this layout plan, but there's 2 drainage structures. One both that need to be adjusted. One that's sort of in the center here, and one's a little further over that was in the middle of where the proposed sidewalk was going. I contended that we need, especially with the additional asphalt, we want to collect it all. So I've asked them to reconstruct this drop inlet and reconstruct the connection to the leach pit over here and run it parallel to the curb line, so it's something we can maintain. that's something there.
So there's gonna be a sidewalk that the people can walk on to get back to the hospital?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And then over here, it was a concern because this brings you down and dumps you into the road without a crosswalk. There's a lot of people that come out of this or this next driveway from hospital housing to come to the hospital. And the likelihood of them coming down and across when they could come across and come into the hospital at a different location, or at least cross there and come down the sidewalk on the opposite side. There's also a planned project that's at some early stages, talking about like 80-something units down in here for the hospital.
Okay.
That, again, would justify having an additional crosswalk. So the town's engineer is recommending an additional crosswalk in this area,
Good.
which would require, I think, just some, a ramp improvement on the opposite side that wasn't originally addressed. The other side is just a roadway reconfiguration with a median. The only comment from DPW was, if you look at this dash line, that's their limit of work. And I look at it like it's nuts to me to have someone saw cut that and marry up the pavement to this. I would say we'll come a couple feet past that limit and come perpendicular on both ends. Go perpendicular and pave curb to curb. So it's a smooth transition. It's a perpendicular joint, and it's not this this sort of very difficult saw cut line that is not gonna. It's not the best way to go.
So the saw cut would be way up here and then another one down here.
Saw cut both ends and then pave the whole thing. So of course, the contract's already out based on these approved plans. So the extra pavement for the mill and overlay to blend it would be an extra on the hospital. So the contractor's pricing that up as well for consideration. But all this is intended to sort of blend into and is being considered as part of the precursor to the Four Corners roundabout project that our engineers are looking at.
Yeah.
Mike and I are dealing with.
Yeah, their limit of work is probably right at where your saw cut line is going to be, going towards the intersection. Taking this one time, any comments on the on-street parking? Any opposition? Is there a motion to support the on-street parking being included?
Can I
on
just,
this
are these gonna be time spaces?
They are already 2 hours.
And they're
we
not part
get-
of the hospital's parking that they have to be required, they're just extra spaces?
We get called all the time because cars park there all day long. Mainly hospital employees.
Right, yeah.
The only comment I would have is down at the bottom, Mike, if you can lift it up a little bit.
Sure.
There's the 6 spaces, and it ends, I mean, I can see that it's off the hospitals, away from their property, but could you add a couple more spaces to the east on that?
It's a private
Private
house.
property down there.
But it's in the town road, isn't it?
Don't we
I
own
don't
that?
know if it is or not.
Talk about this section.
Wide
Yeah.
part of the road there?
Yeah.
We do. So this space exists, and I don't know if there's no sidewalk shown there. It looks like there's sidewalk that picks up there.
Right-
Can you go to
right
the
there.
Google?
I don't think that sidewalk goes down.
There's
that
no
far.
sidewalk there, I don't believe.
Comes around the corner a little.
A little bit, but not that far.
That's all, right.
But that's all gonna be blasted out of there in the future.
No, I take it
anyway.
back, it does run around that corner to that driveway.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
For the
Sorry.
driveway itself, yeah. Nicholson's.
Which Rob knew that.
Does?
Yeah, there's a sidewalk there.
Or is there a
Is that it
path?
right there?
No, yeah, go to Street View, you can
Oh, is that-
drop it down. Goldie guy,
Where's that little orange guy?
here he is. Cause I'm like, it doesn't look like it, but then you pull it up and you're like, oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, right there,
Oh.
there it is.
That's what I just said too.
I thought it was just a path.
Now it goes to the driveway.
Oh, there, that ought to be completed.
Either that or have the parking come down to the driveway. The way those
Boy,
6
I'm sure they'd
spaces
love
can-
that.
Well, the problem is people park on the dirt there now. They park up in the yard.
The people that are living there park out there. And they park right up on that dirt.
I mean, during town meeting, they park there as well, so it's,
Right.
it just stands
So
to
that's,
reason that it
that's
probably
part of the
should be.
road, I think you ought to run the parking all the way back to the.
Because that's
driveway.
right across from the laundry, isn't it?
That is pretty
Yeah.
close.
Close.
And see, and
Depends
that's,
how old
people
it is.
park there before they go up to those 6
Doesn't have
spaces.
the-
you know.
Cut out.
Yeah, I would say, again, this is something that was totally new to me. I missed that piece of it. I would have definitely advocated for it had I seen that.
Well, it seems to me that we should request that they run at least down to the existing sidewalk.
Yeah,
Because that portion of the sidewalk, if that roundabout ever gets done, is gonna be totally redone.
Mhm.
And that would make it a complete,
The other thing to look at too, if you look at the overhead, it only shows 5 spots that are actually in place. They show 6 on the plan.
maybe they're shorter or longer.
Even on the
so,
area.
Mike, what's, I know this is on the agenda, but I think it was placed there
3, 4, 5.
to get
Yeah.
input on what kind of signage was appropriate for those new spaces.
Such as like 2 hour or time regulation or?
I'm just saying, like, there was an intent that,
Yeah.
this was introduced to the agenda. I'm asking if there is, do we have room to report back that we would request, like Jack said, to expand the parking down, which, of course, if I'm thinking about this, the approval from the planning board was that the town would pay for the parking portion and that the hospital would pay for the curb and the
Okay.
sidewalk.
Who owns that house where that building right there?
Yeah, Fields does now, it used to be Nicholson.
So that's why the hospital's not gonna do it, because it's not their property.
No, it's town property.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, the hospital isn't gonna do the curb down there, but,
Beyond their property.
so is that something that we should do now on our own, or is it something we should incorporate into the roundabout project to go on down there with an improved sidewalk all the way up?
Well, the roundabout's gonna be a waste, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd wanna build it at the same time the road
Be nice
works
to do
too.
it at the same
for
time,
the
the town
hospital.
has to pay for it. Be nice to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a, Rob might have a different opinion than that.
No, I would honestly say that this was, in my opinion, what I've seen in the past, this whole thing, including the parking that was approved, could have or should have been part of the hospital's responsibility to construct. But that said, it's already approved, it's let, and the committee didn't know anything about it, DPW didn't know anything about it, or if they did, it was a previous administration. So here we are, we're supportive. To Jack's point, it makes a lot of sense to include parking all the way up to or near at least that driveway. Maybe not exactly all the way to the driveway, but close enough that you're taking care of space that's already being used for parking.
Right.
And it allows you to continue the sidewalk and connect the sidewalk. That's the key, is connecting
Key
that
part,
sidewalk.
yeah.
So I would say from a traffic safety standpoint, maybe it makes sense to go back with a recommendation that the hospital make the sidewalk connection and the town will continue to pave those parking spaces that are created by the new curb line. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
that's
moved.
good. Second.
Any comments on the, clear on the motion there?
Not really. You can sort of repeat it for me, then I have it.
Sure. I think the traffic safety recommends that that there be a discussion with the hospital about extending the on-street parking closer to Surfside Road and connecting the sidewalk along the north side of Vesper Lane from the hospital property to the existing sidewalk.
We don't want them to think the parking's going all over Surfside Road.
Right, no, just
It's
down
only
to
going
the
down to
driveway.
that driveway.
This, so existing sidewalk to the proposed. Right?
Exactly. And if, I'd say at the driveway, and I don't even have a property number there for Vesper Lane, but to the driveway of the property. obviously first driveway on Vesper Lane.
Shows it as number 3, Mike.
Yep,
Is that clear?
Too much sand on the beach.
no kidding. Looks like my house did after it got back in Great Point.
See the,
Okay, so motion made by Bill Pittman, seconded by Jack Gardner. All those in favor say aye.
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 No, I didn't see that.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. All right, item number 5. This is the fun part, we get to all look at renderings.
So I just want to start this discussion
Yeah,
voicing my opinion on this.
okay,
So until I saw these renderings, I was not in favor 100% of these roundabouts.
Okay.
But these renderings you did went a long ways towards making it look like it's something that is workable. So, to me.
That's
So,
great.
I wasn't the artist.
No, but,
Whoever was.
but the
Yeah.
important point is, it truly is, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Because
That is.
you can tell people till you're blue in the face,
Mm-hmm.
and until they have something to look at and interpret themselves,
No.
it's not worth it.
That's so much better than the drawings.
Yeah.
People don't understand this engineering drawings,
No.
but they understand that.
Well, and I had said before I wouldn't oppose once, you had made some explanations, but I've always had concerns about the pedestrians issues.
Yeah.
But this clearly makes it doable, in my opinion, the way that it's laid out and the way it looks and the way it's presented. So
Okay,
I'm a believer now.
okay.
We just don't show Colette's hedge in there.
Yeah.
She's worried about her hedge. She just put some new hedge in last week.
Yeah,
With the green bollards,
the Connors there? Oh, yeah. If you haven't seen, there is a letter in the paper to the editor.
About the
from the
roundabout?
property owner there, and strongly supporting the safety attributes of this intersection. I basically provided them this image, explained to them what the impacts of their property was.
I
They're
thought you were gonna
fine.
say you provided them the letter to
Yeah.
sign.
Oh, no.
Who was it? Mrs. Colette's?
No, it was Paul and Justine Connors.
Oh, right, that's Mrs. Colette's. Well, her name was.
Is it a maiden
Colette's.
name? Okay.
She was my wife's freshman roommate in college.
No kidding.
Oh, small world.
That's how my wife got to the island.
Do we need any action on these? It's basically, they're on the agenda just to collect comments. This is just a review, but if you'd like to make a recommendation to support the intersection improvement, it'd be nice to get that on the record as
Well,
well.
I'll blow everybody's mind. I'll make the recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay,
You talking about all these intersections or just that one?
let's do the high school Four Corners intersection first.
All right.
You can do this to all intersections?
Oh, here's
Well,
another
that's a
rendering.
great point. So Mike, I think what I'm hearing is, because we sort of wrestled a little bit, not too long, but we wrestled a little bit about how much money was worth spending on this effort, because they're not cheap to have these full renderings done.
Right.
Clearly, they do a very professional job,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
think just again, the amount of support that they can garner by having people be able to picture it and really interpret what it's gonna look like later on, I think they're worth their weight in gold.
Oh, yeah.
Where's this one?
That's Four Corner.
This is Four Corners,
Spark
the high school's in the background, the elm tree,
I can
obviously.
see it.
Just coming at it from a different angle.
Right.
And I think that's the part that really made it real,
Okay, so the next one is the Bartlett intersection. This is obviously the new school, new intermediate school, Surfside Road, going north to south, and then going at the bottom of the screen, Bartlett Road. And the rendering is shown here.
What a difference.
Yeah, this is on 4th of July weekend too, there's no traffic at
Yeah,
all.
wouldn't that be nice?
Nice. They're sailing right through there.
Yeah, this is 5 minutes before school starts.
Well, I'll make a motion to support as rendered.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Unanimous?
So one key important point to see, and it's very subtle, but it's definitely incorporated some of the comments and concerns that people had about people coming down, coming in towards town up Surfside on that multi-use path, and having the ability, like they do now, to just run through the intersection. This uses split rail in the grass strip to force people to the cross area, which puts them in full view of the approaching traffic, which I think is just dynamite.
That wasn't lost on me when I saw that.
I just gotta say, I know these are renderings and they're not construction drawings and everything else. But I've said this before with the fairgrounds, Rotary. If everything's built with high curbs, we're gonna build congestion points if the cars don't have a place to pull off the road.
Okay.
So
To pull off the road?
to get out of the way of an emergency vehicle. So if
Oh,
if we're coming up and they need to get out of the roadway, and there's a high curb there, we might as well just be stuck in traffic
Or a fence.
because there's nowhere for them to have refuge to get out of the way. Especially when we start building high curbed islands and, you know,
Those islands gonna
sides.
be high curb?
No, we're looking at Cape Cod berms on all the islands. On Old South. I think we would stay consistent. I'd even go so far as to say that the shoulders would be the grid as well.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just looking at these, and I held my tongue before I was really looking at them, is, you know, just to make sure that we still think about where cars can get the heck out of the way. If we need to get through 'em.
One more thing I just noticed here, that this is a concept or one of the alternatives. And you can notice that the three houses on the school side, on the opposite side there, have driveways coming out at various inconvenient locations.
It's unfortunate.
One thing that we are discussing is a rear exit to eliminate all those driveways
Onto one single roadway.
onto a shared access out to Bacchus,
Yeah, I guess that's good.
to try to make it safer for all the vehicles and the pedestrians. Because if you were able to eliminate the driveways, you could do another run of split rail and keep the pedestrians
School kids out.
completely separate from the traffic.
I would modify my motion to include that recommendation.
And I talked briefly with Chief Murphy about potentially utilizing the emergency egress along the new school as a potential site to improve from whatever it is. The surface now is crushed stone, I believe.
Yeah, and it'd just be taking and making that roadway and safe access or egress for the.
So exploring that as a potential access road for these houses back here, out to Bacchus Lane.
So just to be clear on the motion, I would imagine that we will just take another vote to explore the feasibility, explore the possibility of a rear access driveway for all the houses. Anyone
For the
opposed to-
purpose of eliminating the driveway access into the rotary.
Exactly, so explore the rear access for the houses. Anybody opposed to that? So we'll just go with the same.
I have them down as on the east side.
Yes, it's the east side of Surfside Road. The house is on the east side. I don't guess there's any other issues with some of these other renderings. This is at Fairgrounds in Old South Road. There's two kinds of renderings on here. One was done by VHP, which is this option, and there was another one done by a beta group, which they're effectively the same, except this one shows a cherry blossom in the middle, and the other one just shows a evergreen. So I don't know if you see any comments on what kind of tree goes in the middle of the circle.
Well, I do have a comment about trees in there.
That's gonna be the next big elm, right? Because the one up there isn't gonna be there forever.
Sure.
I don't think a tree in the round part is a problem,
Okay.
but on those approaches, trees will be a problem because the first house move that comes along, somebody will be cutting them down to make room for the house.
Right.
And that'll happen, there's no question about that.
You're talking the median trees
The
on
median
Old South?
trees, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And I'm gonna say it again, if there's, you know, if the cars can't pull off the right side, we're in the middle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and there's no way to get into the left lane.
No, I think that's what the grass buffer is between the two, is
Yeah.
to have the, that be mountable.
Yep, that's all I want.
I mean, I like the buffers, but I prefer that whatever was in there was very low, if at all, or just grass. You know?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's all reinforced. The house move is a tricky thing.
Well, no, 'cause you can't get hit.
Should we discuss potential house moves and if this could be avoided by going around a different way?
Can't do that. Yeah.
Or,
That's all dependent on the house, where it's coming from, how big, but I can assure you, we've moved houses that would, if that's the standard size width and then some, it would still go.
would you look for clearance, just so, for,
I don't remember the numbers, but I think, you mean height?
no width?
Oh, that all depends.
Because here we'd probably have, I'm gonna guesstimate 18 feet for
Oh.
if we use the buffer, the grass shoulder buffer, and then going to the median curb.
Not enough.
I'm gonna
No.
guess you got,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
We've
guess
done
some of those
24
houses we've moved have been
22.
probably
Curb to curb.
curb, yeah,
Well,
Yeah, at
20
least.
feet.
This would actually, you know, it would stop a lot of house moves going through.
well, it wouldn't stop them, they'd cut the trees.
Well, even with the medians,
Yeah.
the center medians.
Yeah, that might be
where
a
the-
problem.
That's where the,
If
Would
it
you
hangs over
straddle
the
the
sides,
median?
you're all right. As long as you
I don't know
cover
if the
the
companies
street.
have the equipment
They
to
don't
do
have the
that.
equipment to duel it. And the problem with that is you gotta set it up at the site. And so if you set it up on two trailers, you can't switch it back to one trailer when you get away from this part. So, you know, I think if we just build it without the median, without the barriers in the median, I think they can make do with what they can make do.
Just grass.
Just grass and et cetera, but, you know, even today up on Fairgrounds, we had two of them parked up on the bike path up there because they're trying to get them around a corner.
And Fairgrounds, Old South Road is a major corridor for
Yeah.
house moves.
Yeah. So I would just be
Something I hadn't
cautious
thought
about
about.
putting something more than 4 foot high in a median, more than 3 foot high probably.
Also, low-lying shrubs are fine.
Oh, yeah, those are
Right.
generally fine, yeah.
That's what I.
They can go
They'd
right
have to
over
work
it.
around the
Something
median, but
Under 3 feet.
they
Yeah.
may have to work around the median.
Okay.
To expand their stance a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, if you want to do the same exercise with a motion to support this, these renderings,
So moved.
Okay.
all those in favor say aye.
Is that, it's by that red car, is that a pull-off or?
Yes, that's for the NRTA.
Oh, okay.
I guess there'd be a shelter here that's not drawn, or at
Yeah.
least a bench.
One on each, okay. That's good.
Would this be a relocated one from the ones across from Amelia? Would there be one there too? I know it's not a full thing, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, the ones at Amelia would be moved.
Okay.
Shoot, is this,
It's neither here nor there with this project, but I was just curious.
oh, I had more of these renderings in here that I didn't show. But yeah, this one actually shows the existing pull off that's just not used at the top of Amelia. You all know that. This shifts it down away from the intersection and repurposes that area as just a park area, basically, a sitting area. And would have the bus pull off, or configure a space for the bus to pull off and have it be usable.
Is there a connection to the bike path from the crosswalk to the bike path there?
It'd be behind this tree.
Okay, so it's there.
Yeah, it'd be that
There is
existing.
one there now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, kind of behind that tree. Geez, I guess there are lots of renderings in here. There's the bus pull off there, down further down Old South Road. I was mostly concerned about the roundabouts of these areas, but the rest of these projects are all part of Article 6 and 7 for special town meeting. If there's This one is not. This is the roundabout at Millview Farm Road and Milestone Road. It's not part of the article. It's considered a low priority intersection, but it's in there for informational purposes. The next intersection is Pulpus Road, and the running for a roundabout at that. Again, this is low priority, not part of the article, special town meeting.
Seems like an awful small roundabout for that. That would be a,
I thought that they were
DOT was, right?
This will happen this winter, this median turn lane, this third approach, that's gonna be removed and brashed over this winter. But teeing it up, just, you really didn't get the level of service. There's still delays and stuff. Left-hand turns off a Milestone to go up Pulpus to merge back in. It was just a lot of queuing. Yeah, we looked at that, but just the circle just made everything operate more efficiently.
What is the turning lane on Milestone?
Motorcycles can't be.
Double deck to a turn, left-hand turning lane?
You could, again, the queuing along Pulpus, and I didn't think there was a lot of heavy backup along Pulpus Road, just, if you ask me anecdotally, I'd say no, there's not a queuing problem, but just the numbers show that
it depends on the
there
time
was.
of day.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of the problem along there, sometimes the day is people coming in and out of that lumber yard.
Yeah.
It's too busy, it really is too busy of it. It'd be nice if they would make their entrance up there by their other,
Yeah.
Oh, eliminate this whole parking lot?
eliminate that whole, as access, because that's one of the problems now. People come around the corner down there and go, and then they're stopping because somebody's sitting there waiting for somebody else to get into the lumber yard.
Yeah, that's gonna really help cut down on the speed past the Jeep dealership and the Ford dealership. It's gonna take a little while to get back up to speed.
So there's no more questions about that item. We'll move on.
Is that a non-native ornamental tree in the center of that?
What, the cherry blossom?
Yeah.
Looks pretty.
Yeah. What do they call it?
But the timing doesn't work because we would have daffodils all lining the sides of the road.
That's right. That's
Tell
included
the
in
artist
the,
to put in little
that's
yellow dots
included
all
in the
over.
construction plan, right?
That actually, I'll be honest with you, like that's definitely going to come up. I wonder if that's
Daffodils.
yeah, because they're going to disturb all those road edges.
Yeah.
Was
We had a
that
meeting
was
with
that
the
talked
garden
about
clubs
with them?
on it. I'm sorry?
Was that talked about at all?
No. But obviously, some kind of coordination with the garden club. I know that they usually go out pretty rigorously and plant bulbs each season. If there's no other comments on item 5, we'll move on to item 6, and that's review of proposed Lovers Lane over Kawhi Monahanset road improvements. Rob, do you want to take this
Sure.
one?
So Mike and I have been meeting with Surfside area folks starting back in the summer. Was August 30th the first one?
Yes.
So we did August 30th at the Surfside Association and sort of introduced the whole project and started to solicit feedback from interested parties. Got a pretty good cross-section of summer folks and year-rounders. And then beyond that, we held a second, again, well-attended session here. We got a lot of year-rounders and a lot of really excellent comments. Mike and I have both been meeting with constituents along, owners along the corridors to get their own specific input of things in and around their own properties, things they've seen over the years. And we actually had some really, one of the best ideas that came out of this was to approach the state forest and Camp Richard to see if we could keep the path, the planned multi-use path over those private properties where some trails already exist, which would allow us to really help minimize the impact to the trees and the canopy along Lover's Lane as we try to improve that road, which really varies all over the map as far as width goes. would allow us to try to meander the road a bit to try to cut down on its inviting speed once this thing does get improved. And we've also got a lot of great feedback on where drainage issues exist, what side the path makes the most sense on through the Orkawa and Monahans areas, which ends up being the south side. And so it's going well. Our next meeting is on the 4th, October 4th. And Mike is working with IT to get all these presentations and materials up on the town's project website, specific project for this. And lastly, I would say that the engineer is the same engineer. It's GPI who did the boulevard. And they are working from all the notes and comments that we've collected. We had a sort of a kickoff meeting with them, conference call, to have them take the first conceptual crack at design. And that's going to be presented on the 4th so that they can provide us with some more detailed feedback.
Any comments on the project from any of the members? Any safety concerns? Seeing none.
So it's not, Lover's Lane is not gonna go all the way up to Surf, or to South?
It is.
Yeah, this
Or
is,
whatever
this is
it
an
is.
older project map.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that
Oh,
one actually
yeah,
shows it going all the way up to Old South Road.
Repaved?
Yes.
Good, about time. There's some houses back there we can't even get to because the road's so bad.
I don't think any action is needed for this, Rob. Is that right? We'll just table this for maybe the October meeting to revisit the outcome of the October 4th meeting.
Sounds great.
Okay, let's table this for discussion next month. And the next item is other business. We already discussed.
I do have another question though.
Sure.
About something. On the overheads, can you bring up the intersection where you're doing all that work downtown, Easy and Lower Main there?
Easy Street and Lower.
There's a handicap, or there's a crosswalk that's like 15 feet from the other crosswalk, but there's a yellow stripe on the road. It's causing us some issues with enforcement.
Yeah,
And
that's
I-
where they didn't,
I didn't know if it was still a crosswalk or if it's,
Easy
Okay.
Street right here.
no, down in front of Vineyard Vines there. You can see the crosswalk that's in the road.
Oh, yeah.
And then right there
Yeah.
is another one
So.
to the right. See that right?
Yeah, stay
this
zoomed
process.
out a little bit, Mike.
Zoom it out.
One more. Yeah, one click and then just slide it down so you can see the whole straight work.
Yep.
So, right now, this intersection is being worked.
Yep.
This crosswalk is the same situation here.
Okay.
It's up a little bit from the intersection.
Yep.
That's actually changing.
Okay.
That's gonna be right in line. This is coming out. So there's gonna be, this crosswalk's gonna stay, a new one's gonna connect the corners.
Okay.
And this one's coming out and there's gonna be a new one connecting the
Straighter.
corners. There's a new one connecting these corners. This one comes out.
Okay.
okay.
This one comes out.
Okay. Good.
And a brand new one goes in where the ramps are,
Yeah, but
right
there's,
here, right here.
yeah, right there.
Right, the ramp is right here.
That was my next question.
So, and it's actually not in line with the Stop and Shop
Right.
crosswalk or sidewalk. It's over here because the ADA accessible dimensions didn't allow us to do that without
Right.
going into private property. So we put it where it made sense.
Yeah, it's only about
off
3
to the
foot
side.
left of the existing
So
sidewalk.
we'll construct an actual sidewalk there, crosswalk rather, and then take out the stones.
Okay.
And re-cobble that. And where we can, we'll try to grind off that paint. And then we met with Mick and Brenda out here to discuss the location of the handicap space.
Mhm.
Currently, or before, there used to be a space here, there still
Right.
is.
There's a couple of spaces
Once
there.
once that goes in, that space is intended to move up ahead of the crosswalk.
Okay.
So that if there's a rear exit wheelchair situation, it's gonna be onto a smooth brick surface as opposed to cobblestones.
Good.
So that's, and then to finish, these two crosswalks are planned to be replaced, and then this radial Belgian block is gonna be completely resurfaced, flush.
Something smooth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all that was planned out there. Again, there was nothing on New Whale, and that might be because of the project that was planned.
Okay.
The project.
Alongside the club car where they're working now, is that gonna stay wide all the way to the corner?
That taxi stand is moving out that widened width, yes. So we're gonna continue that up to the
That's
crosswalk.
fine, good, okay.
I can show you, do you have the sidewalk plan readily available to pull up?
I don't think I do. I can check real quick, but I don't think so.
I can show you when
No,
we.
that's all right, I can, I understand how it's.
Actually, can you zoom in to that stretch of Lower Main, Mike?
Oh shoot. Let me get this out of here. Escape. And pull it out to which?
The club car on Lower Main.
Club car,
Just zoom in on that as deep as you can go.
How about that?
and you widen
Okay.
it out where that
Go
cab
back
is.
one, click. Go forward one click. Can you go back that way?
Let's see if
Up. I'll go the wrong way down the street.
whoops, now I'm out of it. All right, obviously I'm very clumsy with this.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, further up the main street. Well, there's club car. What exactly did you want to see in this area? You wanted to see the straight fork area?
Is there a way you can get to the position of where that truck was in the picture? Yeah, that's okay. That's
Okay.
probably,
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
so that's fine. So right now, this curb line is coming out,
Right.
right?
All the way down.
So that's coming out,
All the way across
for the winter, it's gonna come down to here. And at the crosswalk. So they're gonna finish that before they move down Easy Street.
Right,
Right. Long term, when they come back and do the cross streets and start on South Beach, not South Beach, South Water.
South Water.
When they start on South Water, the plan is that widened line comes out and takes this whole dead space away in here. So
good,
this is a big sea of
Nothing.
brick sidewalk where
good,
people can accumulate. And then, so this really does come out. So you maintain your right turn lane and your through lane,
right.
and the rest of it's taken up with brick sidewalk.
That way
It's really
those-
nice.
Those cars won't be in front of the Pacific Club running in to get money.
Mhm.
Yep.
Run into that money machine all the time.
So change is coming.
Good,
That's changed. We needed that club car one a long time ago.
right,
That would be a big.
Well, we got lucky with the club car because they needed to make those ADA repairs by June 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were working out there in the spring, I caught wind of their requirement and their deadline by talking to Boston.
Work something out.
And they had to build that ramp down the back of the building
Mhm.
to our corner sidewalk. At the same time, we were talking about lowering that sidewalk to make that accessible. And so thankfully, we coordinated with them so they were able to drop their ramp. And we worked it all together before we moved away for the summer. Had we not done that and not been aware, we would have had to rebuild their whole brick walkway in order for us to drop that.
Mm.
So it worked out kindly.
Good.
great.
Probably on other business, we'll give the committee a little bit of a heads up. Last month, we made a motion on, or I guess 2 meetings ago, we made a motion on Ash Street. And just I think there's another request that came in from the butter across the street uh, for removal of a parking space, so that we're just gonna bring that issue back next month before the sign gets put into the sidewalk, so that, you may recall there was a request to put a sign post in the sidewalk, so there was a basement door access to the roadway that wouldn't be blocked by a vehicle.
Right.
We'll bring that request back to perhaps consider eliminating the parking space at that location, because there's a driveway across the street.
Right, yes.
But we're not gonna take that up tonight, today, we'll just hold that off until October. Any other business at all?
Couple of things. One, we're gonna be presenting to the select board in the last, either in the next week or the week after, about the changes to Upper Main Street, from Winter to Pleasant, or Pleasant to Winter, depending on which direction you're going. And we're talking about a little different scenario here, just to repeat to the folks that haven't heard it yet. The goals that exist up there are far different than what we're trying to achieve down by the waterfront, where by the waterfront we've widened to take advantage or to improve the volume capacity for the sidewalk and to meaningfully improve ADA compliance with buildings, crosswalks, et cetera. Upper Main Street, very different approach. We're literally trying to lift existing materials, improve the foundation, which they would sit on, and put them right back in place. That said, we're also looking to remove all these randomly placed crosswalks that really have no business being there. There's almost no chance that we could even attempt to make accessible ramps that comply at each of these locations. So we've sort of stepped back and said, where would they make the most sense to be installed? The two that would be on this particular stretch would be Pleasant Street across Main, which actually turns out to be a little bit turn around the corner onto Main, opposite the entrance into Hadwin House, across the street to roughly the hydrant, because there's no parking allowed within 10 feet of it. And it happens to be between two trees and the space to land. The existing crosswalk comes off the corner of Pleasant and lands in someone's driveway, which is not legal. So we're trying to make that accommodation and then remove all the rest in that work zone. And the only other new crosswalk would be at Winter Street, from, I think it's like Traders Lane area over to Winter across Main. And again, we have adequate room to land it on both sides with accessible ramps. So I will say there's sort of a goal of trying to achieve ADA accessibility throughout the project. However, we recognize that in this particular location, there's very likely existing surfaces like stone that we're not going to be looking to change, and that will very likely not be able to make ADA accessible requirements. So the plan is to get everything founded in a brand new surface as best we can, as close as we can, identify where we don't have full accessibility according to the regulations, and then apply for waivers, showing that we've made an effort. You know, we're trying to keep the historical perspective, and also keep the surfaces safer for all people and all users. And then it's to be done in phases, with the sidewalks first, and then cobblestones after the fact.
What stone is it you're talking about is not going to be accessible?
Probably the 3 bricks.
The big sheets of stone?
Yes.
But they're smooth, right? It's just
Well,
the
they're
joints?
smooth. I think they vary enough themselves. The
Okay.
stones themselves, even if they were set fairly level, the stone itself is out more than
Okay.
a quarter inch in a lot of places. So again, there's definitely issues and challenges we'll see along the way.
You're gonna reset the slabs, right?
We're gonna reset those, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So the good news is that we believe that there's gonna be, between areas down by like the club car that had some bluestone in there. We've salvaged that, and with the intent on being able to fill areas up on Upper Main that have bluestone, but have gaps in the bluestone because of damage that was repaired with cast-in-place concrete or other newer granite. So we want to try to keep that historic appearance up there as we reconstruct it, and that we recognize that it's not all whaling days historic stone. So if we have inventory to be able to do it up there, we want to. So that's the goal up there.
All right, anything else under other business? Yes,
I
Chad?
have a question on this. Seeing that firebox there, those aren't being used anymore, are they?
No, that's not there
The
anymore.
firebox actually got hit a couple weeks ago.
A long time ago.
Okay, so.
All the boxes have been removed. There's some pedestals still in place, but all that
Well,
system's
that's
been
what somebody was
decommissioned.
complaining about the other day.
Right, so they're gonna get rid of the pedestals as you go along then?
Yep, we've actually been talking with Rob for better part of a
Yeah,
year
we have
about
a big list.
as it goes along, they're getting removed. We just don't want to leave holes in the sidewalk and
Right,
stuff like
exactly.
They become cigarette deposits. Beyond that, I would just say that one thing we talked about here was putting together a list of approvals that are action items for DPW to carry out, whether it's sign related or striping or something like that. I would be hopeful that we can, as a committee, develop that action list and publish it with the meeting minutes, or have it at.
No, you're right, I just failed to get that
No,
together.
no, no,
Got right back
I
in.
just want to make sure we don't miss it, and,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're still developing it.
You know, Rob, this picture, is there any opportunity in this reconstruction to maybe address something like that fire hydrant that could be closer to an intersection or sidewalk or crosswalk as to not,
Yeah, this particular one, this is the Pleasant Street location I was
Yeah.
talking about. So the crosswalk landing is gonna be.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, my justification for removing these crosswalks that are not in compliance
yeah,
is, right now, they're not signed no parking,
right,
but they shouldn't be parked on.
right.
And we're ultimately, we're looking at potentially, if you spin around, Mike, so I'm looking up the street. So right here is probably one of the only locations that we're actually looking to make modifications. Dennis?
I'm sorry about the nice and fashion in your car. Hold it upside down like so.
Thank you. Just the flashers?
Yeah.
So the curb jogs right here. So, and the stone was scabbed in somewhere years ago. This is cobblestone, but it's on a pretty steep angle.
Oh, yeah.
This curbstone has started to roll out, and the flat stones against the house there that are sidewalk have started to settle. There's a 2-inch gap under the last step, so there's like a 10-inch step down onto that landing. So one of the things we're talking with 100 on is to explore the possibility of a 2-tiered sidewalk here, or potentially a sidewalk with a grass slope to a curb, a lower curb, just to have a differential there and eliminate this sloped cobblestone, which we would bring the curb line, instead of jogging it back here, the curb line would continue down and then turn into Pleasant, and that line there would line up with Hadwin House across the street. So the curb line would be the same.
That area,
There's a variable parking in here.
yeah,
This says no thanks, Travis. There's a variable parking sign here. This one, Ray, you probably know them by heart.
I do not know.
Okay, this one is like,
Yeah, the-
it's like no parking April to November or something like
Yeah,
that,
something
or?
to do with two vans, right.
Okay,
So
and then
two
this
vans
one,
don't stop there and hold up traffic.
there's another one over here. So,
I wasn't aware of that.
so,
and they
well,
always pull over right there.
so what I was hoping is that we could justify the elimination of parking back to to this utility pole, eliminate parking back to here, or, yeah, so we could add one, we could continue the parking to this point, and then this slightly widened area where the curb line used to be, restore that, and justify eliminating those two spaces in front of the house by taking up all these crosswalks that exist all over the place.
Sounds like a winner to me. What,
Now, there's a little valley that goes across Main Street there. That's the drainage. You come down that side.
At Winter Street?
No, right
no,
where you are.
right where you
Right
Yeah.
where you're standing right now.
Yeah,
There's a valley that goes across. And that's water drainage from the other side from way up on Main Street down.
yeah.
And so you need to keep that valley there because you got no storm drains.
That's accounts for that dip.
So I know there's no storm drains, and the goal of this project is to bring a crown back to the cobbles
Uh-huh.
so that the water is forced into the gutters and down. When you get down to if you do that and you carry the water down to Winter
Main
Street,
Street, right.
that we could certainly crown it in such a way and elevate it so that the water is carried from the east side to the west side.
Right,
And then it gets to those catch basins at the bottom of the top of Winter.
right. So you get rid of that valley up on the top then by Pleasant
We
Street.
would, yes.
What if you just brick that down to the Hadley House? Isn't that's pretty chopped up in there right now, isn't it? With
It's really bad.
Pretty
Yeah.
right here, but.
What
it's
were we
stone.
saying?
what? It just my memory now seems to me there's been a lot of patching in that
Oh, it's
area.
a mess, yeah.
What if you just pulled that all out of there and bricked it down to the Hadley House?
Then you would be hung, and I'd be
Hung?
sent off island.
Oh.
And it'd be hard to find those bricks too. We had to buy some of those bricks once already. We found them down in Virginia, but they're really hard to find. Those bricks are tongue and groove.
Oh, are they?
Right, yeah,
Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, I heard also that they didn't match for at least a year or two,
right.
and they
That's gonna
eventually
happen.
faded together.
Right,
Yeah.
but they're tongue and groove.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. We definitely don't have any of those in stock that I'm aware of.
So why is that no parking there? I understand your reasoning for the curbing, but why is it now no parking?
It's tour vans.
Two events, they park there and talk about the three bricks.
Oh, geez, that's something with 15 years I never knew.
And they hold up traffic.
So there's two things that were important to support my thought of bringing out the curb. And so I brought the owner, one of the owners, down to Macy Warehouse to take a look, to see what we had done there as far as the accessibility goes. And my initial thought was the opposite concept. Leave them their stone and the blue stone along the front. Raise the center of the house, raise this landing up, you can see the gap here. Raise this landing up so they have a standard step that matches the rest of them. So we have a flat landing in the front, and then from there to the corners of the house, from here to the corner of the house is on a slight ramp slope down, just like the Hadwin House, or just like Macy Warehouse has. And then there would be a single step in the front with a new sidewalk in the front that could be brick and fully accessible. All right, so this is an accessible path through the front of the house. So different than the Macy Warehouse scenario where NHA was supportive because they were achieving the goal of accessibility into their building. This, you can't get accessible
Yeah.
because of the steps. And they don't like switching up materials in front. They're just not supportive of putting brick in front of the stone in front of their house. But we did talk about possibly trying to find similar stone that would match and either widen the sidewalk, and it's possible we could make a a good attempt at trying to make that surface accessible, especially if we had new stones to work with. I don't think that we could match enough that it would actually look right, because the stuff is so old. But in lieu of that, just simply putting a curb down where we talked about, leaving this curve, or, leaving this whole stretch instead of cobblestones, making it grass. And then if not grass, we actually talked about doing more of an angled cobbles set in concrete. So it's still it's a stable slope. It's not something you walk on, but it would match the street and would allow you the differential to support the landing here and get the curb line proper so that the gutter drains, the water away.
We got hung up on that corner a lot too, trying to take that turn to get up Main Street and then down Gardner.
Yeah,
So if it's anything, I would.
Could we face or come on Pleasant?
A cobble would
Go
be,
down Pleasant,
would be
just a
awesome.
stretch.
Because nobody ever knows where to go when
Do we have
you
coverage
take
down
that
Pleasant to
turn.
get down there? Yeah. If you could go down and flip it around. Or go back one more, sorry. That's fine. Flip it around there. So Mike and I measured this. It's like 17 feet curve to curve here. Right? And you still got this curve up pretty high, both sides. The plan would be to come back to, what's the sides? Is it
Summer Street?
Summer?
Yep.
Come back to Summer.
Yeah.
And basically hold the grade at Summer and then slightly start to raise Pleasant until we get to the intersection, so that we basically have a 1-inch gutter, so that the curb is mountable on both sides by a vehicle, effectively widening the road to like 25 feet, right? Because you can drive on the sidewalks. They're going to be constructed to be able to accept heavy loads, and that helps
Yeah.
avoid the trailers rocking around and throwing ladders.
Yeah,
and
when
all
you
the
get
other
that,
crap
when you
that's
make that
happening
left
there.
turn up Main Street, that's where it always
Left
jams
or
up.
right, and especially if we eliminate the parking right there at the corner, and bring it back to where that jog was,
That'll help a lot.
that helps with the swing. I think if we did that, we can keep the parking as is, or possibly eliminate the furthest one
Yeah, the one at the end.
on the
that you don't really
end,
need.
up
Yeah.
in front of that brick, the last brick.
Yeah.
And then the swing out going down in front of Hadron House works fine. The crosswalk is there, but all that would be new curb, and the pedestal for the alarm box is gone too. So that's kind of.
That'd be a
that's
huge
cool.
improvement.
Yeah, make a big difference. So,
They didn't have any problem with the mountable curb sidewalk, or you didn't talk to them about that?
no, I brought that up. That's been supported.
Yeah, I think these are gonna be wonderful ideas.
Right.
Long overdue.
Good. All right. Anything else under other business?
Did anything ever come of our decision about the parking or the loading zone down on South Beach Street, or the extension there?
Yes, those are all town administration's office. I think they're still trying to catch up
Okay.
with the list of recommendations we had for this past summer, much less last
Now,
meeting.
one of the problems down there, when they come in to see us, and talk, they're worried about the cars parking behind their business. Well, they were operating out of the back of the store all summer. They had boxes all over the parking
Yeah.
area.
Yeah,
They were selling stuff.
they had sales out there a couple times. We had to shut them down. Couple times.
I was shocked by that. I
They-
couldn't-
They kept doing it.
I saw it multiple times. I was really surprised. I had never seen anything like that down here.
They had people, they had somebody, guys sitting out there
Yeah,
in a chair.
boxes
making
of shirts and
sales.
stuff, yeah.
Right. That's why they wanted the cars out of there. They wanted no parking there, so it would open up their little business.
I think the
running out
loading
back alley.
zones in the paved areas had not been painted also, and I'm pretty sure we've been down in there painting.
And I've been noticing, practically every time I go by in the morning, that area right in front of Brotherhood of Thieves, there's a Cape Cod Express truck
Oh, yeah.
parked there, so they're using that even though it's not a loading
Can
zone.
you go out in front of, down on South Water, opposite the tennis place there? Kind of right by Jack Will's. There's a brick walk that comes through that property.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yep.
that was the driveway for a long time, then they made it into a walkway.
Mm-hmm.
And now and we reclaimed the parking, I think, last year on it,
A year and a half.
or a year and a half
while
ago. Because they were leaving it, it kept getting striped as no parking.
Yeah,
And I said, well, they can't park in there anymore, they've made it a walkway.
okay.
And
I
so
guess I
we-
got a call on that.
Damn
Clean up.
DPW truck.
We're blocking it. That's classic.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's right there.
Right
Right there.
It's striped in that picture.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I don't think it's striped anymore though.
no, it's,
Yeah, okay, so I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're all on the same page.
yeah,
So
that's legal parking right there.
okay.
We did talk about that, putting a crosswalk at that location and have that be a ramp, but at the end of the day, I think we just.
Well, it's in the
better
middle
served
of the
for parking.
intersection.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
That is an intersection that potentially could use a crosswalk, right there, but you'd have to move it one
Yeah,
way,
yeah, somewhere else.
one direction or
I
other.
mean, it's one up
Yeah.
here, it's fine.
Yeah, but you get a lot of people coming down right there, and that, right there is where I'd put it, right
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
You get a lot of people coming down there, and they cross there.
Good spot for one.
But that
It's a good
potentially
spot for
could be
parking, too.
one.
But then you'd have 3 crosswalks within
Yeah,
block.
that
The
is
block
true. That is
between
true.
Oak to
Hmm.
Cambridge.
Yeah, I haven't heard a clamor for putting one in, so, but
They don't seem to care if there's one there or not.
but you certainly could get rid of that when you redo that curb could
So
put
there's no
across
need to
there.
keep a ramp there?
Do they have the
Full
dumpsters
curb?
back there?
No, they're around.
Are they on the other side?
Yep.
Thought
Yeah, they
came
couldn't.
out that way.
No, those things. See those
Oh no, they don't.
planter
They're on the
stands?
other side.
Those things have electricity running to them. They can't even move them. So there's no way they can get anything down there.
Okay.
Anything else at all, any other business?
Geez, this is the most productive traffic safety meeting I think we've had in a long
Well, let's,